أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone who has given us this time together tonight, and so that we can get started and I can kind of introduce what this space will be, inshallah, and how we will engage with each other these next 3 months together in order to see how we'll move forward into 2023. I am big on exchange, even though we're like limited with the virtual space. If you are able, I would love for your camera to be active if you are able. If you are not, alhamdulillah, I understand it's all women here in this space. Your face will not be shared in a public space, so it's comfortable here for us, okay? But let me just first say that, always use the chat within the space. I want to introduce what this space will be for us when we come together. Let me make a few little adjustments right quick. Okay. All right. So if you can, feel free to mute yourself until the mic opens for you to speak and share. So this is, for those of you who had the opportunity to join us during Ramadan, it seems like two years ago, maybe. It wasn't 2020? Yeah. In 2020, when I first introduced the idea of women in worship during Ramadan. And having that space was really, something that I knew I needed. But I also recognized a need in a space of conversation that we as Indigenous women who are Muslim needed to have the spiritual conversations that don't always take place. And let me also frame that in saying the conversations that we don't always have, meaning that we have been called to, in many ways, shrink ourselves and our experiences and how we connect with this way of life that we call Al-Islam. I have experienced in many ways my experience with my father, and I have notes in front of me, but I come to realize every time I have notes in front of me, it's a suggestion. It's not law. But it's a strong suggestion to keep me focused. But this is what's on my spirit at this time, in this moment that we're going to have this conversation. My experience with my father has been that I was raised with a man who honored every part of my womanhood, myself, my sisters, my mother. And when I say honored every part of it, even the flaws, the learning, the humanity and learning of being a woman and being Muslim, right? And he didn't always profess to be the one to say, oh, I have the answer for that. He'd point me in the direction to say, I don't know what your full experience is, but I can point you in the direction to some tools that could help you find your answer. And this has been the household I was raised in. Come to find out through my teen years, my 20s and 30s, that's not an idea that is much embraced in the Muslim community when it comes to having a voice and not feeling the need to shrink. So I went through a great deal of my time shrinking because I thought, well, maybe I'm just not Muslim enough. Maybe I'm not pronouncing my letters quite right. And as a result, Islam is not the space for me to fully express how deeply I desire my relationship with Allah to be grand, to be big. So I kept quiet in spaces when I would hear something that was just like, that's not what my life looks like. I don't know that world, right? But I continue in order to feel a part of certain communal spaces. I've come to realize as I got older, it was like that was not working for me. Um, and I had to ask the right questions about what Allah wants for Camila, for me. And the more I started having conversations in that manner and in that way, the more I discovered how many Black women in particular had always felt that energy and that experience. Not to mention being raised in a Muslim household, like that's a whole nother dynamic, right? Because the assumption that, you were born into a Muslim household, that it's automatic, Islam is going to be what you go for, right? You still have to shahada in your heart. You still have to decide, this is my way of life, right? And so the journey of unfolding that, being an evolution of even my parents' Islamic learning, and honoring what they gave me thus far, and that there were some parts of myself that is going to expand what they've given me, never denying how they showed up with the tools that they knew how, right? And me finding that space to have these real, honest and rich conversations with them, and my experience being Muslim allowed me to have a very vulnerable and open conversation with my child, who had to go through this same journey of deciding, like, look, I'm going to create a Muslim household, but at the end of the day, I don't want you choosing it because of me. I want you to choose it because Allah put it in your heart, because you got to answer for that, right? So that journey and that kind of conversation for me was it was very intense, because sometimes if we use the example of, like, if there's a household that says you have to go to college, right? Everybody went to college, or you have to be a lawyer. If you go to college, you got to be a lawyer, because we come from a long line of lawyers. But then that child be like, well, no, I want to be a sculptor. Like, that's what I want to do. But they're like, no, we are lawyers. I've created this great life for you. You've been able to do this. Sculptors, like, who makes a living being a sculptor, right? And they end up making a choice on a calling that we placed on them, as opposed to the calling that Allah has placed on them. Are we honoring the humanity of what we have birthed? And are we honoring the humanity of people that we come in contact with? Because many times we project our own insecurities around our spiritual journey on others in order to have company, in order to have people near us in these conversations, right? So I'm going to open, like, straight away with this conversation. Those of you who have experienced me before, I facilitate the space. And in me facilitating the space, I want to give open access for you to share and exchange. This is that safe and sacred space. My voice is shaking a little bit because, like, I always take, like, my the way that I move with this way of life, and with Islam, and what I am learning every day, is that I do not say that I have the answers. I am so severely, severely clear that I'm responsible for every letter, every word, every action that I play. I am clear on that. And it's just not something that I play with. It's just not. And I knew I needed this safe space where I could just, like, unedit, let it fly about the level of severe seriousness it is for us to recognize how good we got it. And nobody tells us how good we got it, right? And the fact that you're in this room, it is a testament to when, Allah blesses the seeker. The fact that you're even seeing. Sometimes we so quick to want the answer that we don't understand the beauty, the blessing, the pouring that happens just to be seeking, and that the seeking has been inspired on you because of how much Allah loves you. Like the fact that you want to understand that, you didn't come up with that. We didn't come up with that. We just didn't. Allah put it on our hearts to want it, to have this desire for it. And in that is the blessing. And, you know, I love to know that, you know, in this work that we do, because all of us have very specific, are very much connected to our community work, our family work. You know, it's like I have a passion and a drive for whatever those areas of your life are. And still there's something that's just like, okay, how do I balance that out with paying my bills, God? Like, how do those roads meet? Because I know I want some parts of this world. I know I want the house with the big bathtub. I know I want to travel the world freely, be in control of my schedule, you know, or I know I want a healthy, happy, and loving relationship. I know I want those things, right? And so at what cost do I, you know, how do I merge these things to where I don't feel like I have to sacrifice this part of myself in order to experience life, right? And so this conversation is your safe space for us to unpack those things, right? It's not a space of judgment. It's not a space of you should not. It's not that space. I'm being very clear about that. And the more you feel comfortable with what you share, that's up to you. Camila, I don't have no problem sharing it because I feel like, you know, Allah knows clearly, fully everything that I'm doing. So why am I tripping about if you find out? Like, for me to be tripping more about what other folks think more than what Allah say, it's just kind of like, look, I want to shift the tables on that. That's Camila. So I don't have no issue about that. Like, yeah, that's why I created this space. Like, yeah, because each of you are an answer to a prayer. The fact that you're here, there's a message that comes through you to me that can be helping me in this journey as I create this space for us to have these conversations, right? So alhamdulillah, and I thank you for being obedient listeners and showing up in this space and in this time. So